So after going into Batman's rogues gallery, if it was filled with Marvel villains, I think the only appropriate direction you would go into next is doing the same thing with Superman. Again, these videos are very similar to some I've already done before. Marvel villains perfect for DC heroes and vice versa. I've done one separately for the X-Men and so on. However, in those videos, we only did 2 villains per character. In these ones, we're going a little more in depth and going through 8 different characters and giving reasons and details as to why it would work. So let's waste no time and get right into the first villain. And that villain I have is Magneto. His tragic backstory and death of his people is something that could sympathetically tie to Superman and make their antagonistic relationship towards one another more complex. Magneto's Omega mutant abilities would put him on a scale of power that Superman is matched up with often, so it wouldn't feel like Magneto would be out of place. He could also challenge Superman's ideals and insight on the world in a way that Superman could then see Magneto as no ordinary villain and somewhat of a protector for his people. That is not to say that Superman would immediately be like, okay, well, you know what, I'm not going to fight him anymore. At the end of the day, they're still hero and villain, if you will, but Superman will understand Magneto's side. He'll understand the character more to then realize why he does what he does. And I think that would be one of the most important things about their relationship. Superman does not agree with Magneto, but he will see where he's coming from. He'll understand why Magneto has such a pessimistic view on the world and why he does not trust humanity. It could even be certain prejudices that Superman has experience with going through against humanity as well. But unlike Magneto, Superman has ways around it and he has the mentality to deal with it and make it better. There's definitely a discussion here between 2 characters that Magneto would try to use a lot of. He knows that both of them are on a scale of powers and just speciality that humans will never be able to accomplish. Magneto thinks to himself, we should not be following along with human law and order. We should be above them. We are an apex species. He would try and get Superman into that way and mold of thinking. It would not work, but I could only imagine the type of really interesting conversations that these 2 characters would have in that aspect. And then when you look at both of these characters' powers and start to think of ways on how they could fight one another. If I'm not mistaken, Magneto can become so powerful that he could control the iron within your own bloodstream. I'm even looking into the scientifics of Superman's flight. Depending on the canonized reasons on how Superman flies, potentially how he is maneuvering the matter in the atmosphere of Earth, the tectonic plates, gravity, magnetism, whatever it might be. Maybe there's a way that Magneto could take control of how Superman flies. If Superman uses the environment around him and uses a form of magnetism, Magneto's got that covered. He could completely strip away Superman's ability to fly. That is where things in the fighting department get very interesting. Now, I will say, I don't know what type of durability Magneto has. Obviously, if Superman's gonna land a punch on him, it's probably not gonna be pretty. And Magneto probably won't feel all that great, but Magneto is not the type of guy to let his guard down. For Superman to even be able to get that close to Magneto is not going to be easy in the first place. But overall, I think these 2 characters together, they could have a lot of interesting conversations and dialogue and how they see the world, but the fighting, the battles could be really epic. Then I have Annihilus, a cosmic powerhouse that fits Superman's rogues based from space and multiversal threats. His drive for conquest is already similar to many villains who already belong in Superman's rogues gallery, so he won't feel like too much of a stretch of a character to belong in the first place. And his physiology and abilities can also ensure he is a recurring threat for many stories to come. In a lot of ways, I could see Annihilus being a doomsday type of a character. Doesn't talk all that much, can't really reason with the guy, just death and destruction wherever he goes. And the battles between Annihilus and Superman would be well, destructive. I think you could tie Annihilus into some universal threats. Maybe he has some form of relationship or connection to Darkseid, which then would bring Superman into Darkseid's path. Maybe even Annihilus has had relationships with the Kryptonians long before their planet was destroyed, making him hate Kryptonians for a particular reason. I think there's a lot you could do with the character. I don't think you're going to get anything philosophical or something that's going to make you think about this for days to come. You're simply just going to get spectacle between Superman and Annihilus and the way they fight each other. It could involve how Annihilus opens the door to Superman having more connection to universal threats. Now I have Doctor Doom. His mixture of magic and science makes him a threat to Superman, considering he's two things in one. Often, Superman fights one or the other. He'll fight someone very intelligent, like a Lex Luthor, or he'll fight a magical being. It's not often that two of these prime sources of power are in one character. And Doctor Doom is no ordinary dude with intelligence who happens to know magic. He is probably the best of the best combining those two things. When you take it from the idea of a true savior, Superman usually having that type of complex, but Doctor Doom thinking he is that himself, that could come into play here, since Doctor Doom thinks he is the most capable, but he's then faced up against Superman's presence, which immediately challenges that. And his scientific and technological creations, along with his strategist mind, could give him a ton of unpredictability against Superman, which would then have Superman never knowing what comes next, or even the things that Doctor Doom creates, Superman would have no idea what it is. So I did use Doctor Doom for his own completely different reasons in the Batman version of this video, and I think it's absolutely fine to put Doctor Doom for somebody else as well. Realistically, I do think that Doctor Doom is a Justice League level threat. That is how big he is. That's how he should be treated. That's not to say sometimes, though, that Doctor Doom could just be used for one solidified character, and Superman would be on that type of power scaling to be able to handle Doctor Doom. Look, I know a lot of people online who take comic book battles very seriously, don't like hearing that stuff, and I'm not even saying Superman would win. I'm just saying Superman is the type of character, he's at that type of level, presence, threat to Doctor Doom that could argue a one-on-one matchup. I do think Doctor Doom, though, is too smart for Superman, even though Superman's powers and abilities triumph Doctor Doom in many ways. Because of how smart he is and dedicated to his craft that he is, Superman is going to need some outside help for this. I also think it would be really interesting what Doctor Doom would want to do with this Kryptonian heritage, and how he would even try to strip away the Superman family to then use maybe some of his relatives, his cousins, for his own cause. Or would Doctor Doom completely hate the fact that an all-powerful alien like Superman exists on Earth? Would he want to be rid of them? That's where things get interesting. What would Doctor Doom want to do? Have their power, use him and his people, or be completely rid of them and annihilate them all? Then I went with Loki. The god of mischief adds on to Superman's magical vulnerability while somewhat mirroring Mr. Mixie-Spitlick. Would use his playful trickery and manipulation to twist Superman's perception of the world, or the world's perception of Superman. And his abilities to shapeshift and turn into others could harm Superman, never truly knowing who he's dealing with or what Loki has planned. Mainly, I think what this matchup is and why I connected him to Mr. Mixie, I believe this would be all an attempt to just get under Superman's skin. I don't necessarily think Loki would have reasons to hate or despise Superman or to even want to kill Superman. He would just want to take advantage of the Man of Steel. He would want to use his emotional traits to his advantage. He would want to make his life a turmoil and bask in the pleasure that he gets from it. I think Loki being able to manipulate and again get under the skin of Superman arguably the strongest person in the DC universe outside of omnipresent characters, that would self-assure Loki that he's capable of handling anybody in his path. Up next, I have Ultron, an always evolving AI with Brainiac type features, but far more focused on a more genocidal perspective, if you will. Just like his experience with Brainiac, Superman would be no stranger to Ultron's philosophical takes on humanity, along with his lack of emotion for life. Ultron could even see Superman as the answer to many problems, but because there aren't many of his kind left, he is now an outlier or an anomaly that needs to be removed. In many ways, I think Brainiac and Ultron are kind of the anti-version of one another. They're both very similar in the fact that they're these conquering robots with escalated AI type features. They can do many different things that are just beyond human comprehension. But whereas Brainiac is much more about domination, collection, ownership, Ultron, at least from what I know, can be more about destroying, removal, self-proclamation. Whereas Brainiac would go off to Superman and other surviving Kryptonians and want to own them, use them for himself as bodyguards, or to entrap them in glass cases within a city. Ultron would be more so about destroying them, removing them as a potential threat and target. Ultron would think, if I cannot have your power and there's not enough of you to make a difference within the universe, I might as well remove you. You are an anomaly that should not be present, yet you are, which is kind of ruining my sense of reality, so let's fix that. Then I have another mutant in Mr. Sinister. He carries a genetic obsession with mutant evolution and would 100% want to get his hands on some Kryptonian DNA. He would make a perfect mad scientist archetype villain for Superman who sees all living beings as expendable. And he plans long term and creates events behind the scenes that would all lead Superman to his direction, but in a predetermined time. What's cool about this one is Mr. Sinister, like Magneto in a way, of course, loves the mutant gene and believes that it's far beyond humanity in many ways and believes that there should be a mutant dominance on Earth. But once he would see Kryptonian DNA and what it does under a yellow sun, the powers you gain, how strong you are, there's no way Mr. Sinister wouldn't start gushing over some juicy Kryptonian DNA. First things first, he'd be thinking, how do I get my hands on a Kryptonian? How do I then extrapolate the DNA? How do I perhaps give somebody Kryptonian DNA? And the cherry on top, and probably what his ultimate goal would be, how do I merge Kryptonian DNA with mutants? Could you imagine the power of some of these people? As if so many mutants aren't already so overpowered, imagine what they would become now. And imagine all of them serving Mr. Sinister. That would be chaos. Just as a side note to this potential here, imagine Mr. Sinister cloning Kryptonians. Imagine Connor Kent was not cloned by Lex, half Superman, half human, an evil Superboy, if you will. And in this hypothetical world of Marvel and DC existing with one another, it would be interesting having Superman develop more of a relationship with the X-Men, especially if two of his rogues galleries going to be Magneto and Mr. Sinister. Then I have Hyperion. During the times of Hyperion being more villainized, at least, this could be your classic dark Superman, a direct physical match, your classic strength versus strength. Whereas Superman is more compassionate, Hyperion could come off more authoritative, which could completely contrast Superman. And his similar abilities, power scaling, his origins, even if you look at him, he easily fits Superman's world just based off of his costume and how he looks. Now, I will say, you could have done either one here, Hyperion or Sentry. I think both of these characters would fit your classic strength versus strength brawl against the Man of Steel. I just went with Hyperion because I think everyone says, oh, what would a matchup look like between Superman and Sentry? That's the most common one talked about, so I wanted to just change it up a bit here. To be honest, I don't really have too much to say about this one. I think we really just like two really strong characters duking it out every now and then. There's no denial it's fun to see Superman versus Doomsday versus Zod versus Darkseid. It would be no different here. It's just a different personality and a character of Hyperion. And yes, there's probably ways you can connect these two characters throughout their cosmic origins, but overall that's mainly why Hyperion would belong in Superman's Rogues Gallery. It's all about the crazy scaled epic action sequences you would get with them. Now last for this video, certainly not least of all the Marvel villains you could choose for Superman, I went with Kang the Conqueror. A conqueror and traveler of multiverses will eventually need to come across and face the world's greatest hero at some point. Realizing the defeat of Superman is probably his only chance to complete his goals. He could attempt to attack Superman through false senses and acts of compassion and care. So, for example, Kang could manipulate Superman into changing the fate of Krypton, which would then make Superman think that Kang is a savior, he's good, blah blah blah. Superman would need to outthink this villain rather than using super strength or other super abilities. Kang could be one of the most different villains he's ever had to fight, using extremely unorthodox methods, especially for the Man of Steel. Now, I'm not saying Superman doesn't think outside of the box. I'm not saying he's opposed to that or incapable of that, but I think Kang is on a whole other level that Superman would be dealing with not one, not two, not three, but an infinite amount who are all working together on the same page just to defeat him. Kang for Superman alone would not be one of these comic series, if you will, that is just ended within a couple of issues. The effects that Kang have on Superman would be something that would need to be throughout issues for a constant amount of years. You always know Kang is there and doing something, but Superman solves that problem much later down the road. It can't just be like, all right, he meets him in issue 21 and beats him in issue 28. That's not how this character is going to work. It needs to be a long-standing thing where sometimes it would feel like Kang has maybe left or forgotten about Superman, but he hasn't. He's still there, and the time will come. There's arguments to be made that maybe Kang would be more on a Justice League type level, and I would not necessarily argue with that, and maybe that's even what it would take for Superman to fully beat him. Beyond that, I think it's still fair to put him within his Rogues Gallery, considering that Kang's priority would be Superman. But there you go, guys. Superman's Rogues Gallery if it was filled with Marvel villains. Now, of course, there are so many other characters you could have gone with. One that I didn't mention is someone like Arcade, kind of matching up with that Toyman vibe. You could have even gone with Juggernaut, which I have mentioned before in a previous video, or even Mole Man. Considering Superman and Fantastic Four, their villains do match up pretty well. So you guys let me know in the comments below what you thought of some of my options and what some of your options would be for Marvel villains in Superman's Rogues Gallery. That is all I have for you on this video, everyone. I do hope you all enjoyed it, and until the next time, I will talk to you all very soon.